Hi everyone, Sabrina here from Scrappy Tales Crafts, and today I'm going to share some awesome card making hacks that I have learned throughout the years. Some of these hacks are completely my own, which I have not seen on YouTube yet, and some are hacks that I have learned from other people and just hacks that I use every single day. These are my top 10. The first category of hacks I'm going to discuss is embossing. And one thing you need when you are embossing is an anti-static tool. This basically gets rid of any static, any oils that might be on your paper, and it creates like a protective layer so that your embossing powder only sticks to your stamped image. So you can buy an anti-static tool, or you can create your own, because odds are you have cornstarch or baking soda or baking powder in your kitchen. You might also have a nylon sock here, like I'm showing right now. This is kind of like a pantyhose type sock. And you basically just add the cornstarch to the sock, you tie a knot at the end to create the sack, and you have yourself an anti-static tool. I use cornstarch. That particular bag you just saw, I've had that for 3 years. It is very well used and it works fantastic. I'm going to show you how this works. So first I stamped the image without any cornstarch, and then that second image I added my anti-static to the cardstock, and then I'm going to pour over my white embossing powder. So here you're going to see the difference. On the one with the cornstarch, there's hardly any excess powder, and then on the one without it, there is quite a bit of powder where I don't want there to be. So I'm going to heat set both of these images, and once I do that, you will really see the difference. Alright, so those are heat set. I'm going to zoom in again. And here you can see the one without the cornstarch has a lot of excess powder below the boat. This one has barely any at all. So I absolutely love that hack, and like I said, I've been using that sock for 3 years now. So for my second embossing hack, I'm showing you some Versamark ink pads. One is completely dry, that's the one on the left. The one on the right is a brand new ink pad. You can see the difference in color. The one on the left is more of a pale gray, whereas the juicy Versamark is more of a bright white yellow color. So to re-ink your Versamark pads, I use vegetable glycerin. You might also have this in your kitchen. I add 5 drops to a dried up Versamark ink pad. I use a business card to spread the glycerin throughout the ink pad. I'm just going to add a few more drops, and it will sink down into that ink pad, and it's a brand new juicy Versamark. You do not have to buy re-inkers for Versamark because Versamark is made out of glycerin. So if you just add more glycerin, you got yourself a Versamark pad. So here I'm going to show you. I'm going to stamp that same image out again, and I got a perfect impression, and the embossing stuck very nicely to it. Alright, for the third embossing technique, this one you might know of. It's very popular. It's honestly kind of what got me into card making, just embossing in general. But this particular technique is one that I gravitate towards all the time, so that's why I included it in today's video. I just stamped out a background stamp onto some pink cardstock, and I'm going to add some white embossing powder over that. I did stamp the background with Versamark ink, and I heat set the white powder, and now I'm going over the edges of this pink panel with some darker pink ink. So there's kind of 2 techniques here. One, emboss resist. You can see the white embossing powder is resisting that ink and it's staying white. You can also use clear embossing powder. You don't have to use white here. The second technique I'm showing is I stamped on colored cardstock. That way, I don't have to do a lot of inking. I only have to add a little bit of darker ink around the edges. So instead of embossing on white cardstock and inking up the whole panel, you can just ink up part of it by stamping it on already colored cardstock. All right, moving on to my next technique, which is you can emboss with water. So I took my spray bottle, I added some splashes of water. I picked up a little bit of it with the paper towel just because I didn't want it to be soaking wet. And then I just poured some gold embossing powder over those splatters, and you get a very organic, artistic looking splatter background just using water and a spray bottle. So you don't necessarily just have to use Versamark or ink to add embossing powder. You can use water. You can also use a water brush and paint some water onto an image and then add your embossing powder that way. You don't have to buy like a Versamark marker. You can just use a watercolor brush. So I'm going to heat set those splatters. Another tip I would recommend when you're heat setting is try to heat set above your work surface. That way the heat won't trap underneath and curl your cardstock. Heat naturally wants to escape, so it's going to try to escape around the edges. If you have it heat set above your work surface, the air is going through the cardstock, so you're going to get less warping. I learned that from Tim Holtz. So like I said, some of these I've learned from other people, some I have discovered myself. Here you can see how I used both of those embossed backgrounds that I created. I just added a heart with a Mother's Day sentiment and then a few flowers, and you got yourself a quick card. So those were a few of my favorite heat embossed hacks. Now I'm going to show you a dry embossing hack. And what I'm going to do is take an embossing folder and I'm going to add ink to it. I'll add ink on both sides. I wasn't sure which side I wanted to use. I end up liking the ink being transferred in the debossed areas as opposed to the embossed areas. So the color of the cardstock is going to show through on the raised areas, and then the area where I added all that ink is the debossed areas, the negative portion, I guess you could say. What I did with that background is I die cut a heart from it, and I just created a really simple and quick Mother's Day card. You can also use the other panel for another card. But yeah, so that's a really cool technique that I have learned. The next category of hacks I want to go over is watercoloring. The first one is that you can stamp your stamped images with markers. So if you want to ink up a certain area of your stamp with a certain color, you can do that with markers. So for this boat, I wanted the sails to be purple and the boat and the flag to be blue. So I used my markers to color in that stamped image so that I had color exactly in the areas that I wanted that particular color. And because I'm using watercolor markers, I'm able to pull that pigment from the stamped line to the center of the image. I also added some of that same marker to the side of my glass mat to add some more dimension to that image. You can do the exact same with water-based inks. Here I'm using a red Distress Oxide ink. I stamped it out, and I'm taking a water brush and I'm pulling that ink towards the center of the image. For the sails, I wanted them to be blue, so I just ink smushed some blue ink onto my glass mat, and I'm picking that up with my water brush and transferring it over to my watercolor image. Even for that little cloud, I wanted there to be just a little hint of red, so I just use a little bit of water to pull that in. But it still looks like a white cloud for the most part. So there's two ways to color with watercolor markers or with water-based inks. Another fun technique that I have learned is something called ink smushing. Basically, you just lay some ink onto your glass mat, add some water, and add some cardstock on top. This is just like 80-pound cardstock. It's pretty lightweight. You can use watercolor cardstock instead, but I just wanted to create a quick little heart for the background of my sailboat and my cloud, and I just added a sentiment to the bottom to create a cute little tag. Okay, so we're on to my favorite hack, and I'm very proud to say that this is one I have discovered myself. I was so tired of having to re-buy Wink of Stella pens or the Nuvo Shimmer pens. I wanted to create my own, so I took an old Wink of Stella, such as this one, I refilled it back up with water, And there is going to be some leftover glimmer from the original Wink of Stella. So you can just add water and just stretch the life of it. But if you want it to be almost the exact same shimmer that you had when you first bought your Wink of Stella pen, I would recommend adding some gold perfect pearls to that water you just added. I do about 3 small scoops using some scrap paper. I kind of eyeball it. You could put more or less. I find if you add a lot though, you could clog up the pen. So I find 3 small scoops is perfect for me. I will say it's not exactly like a Wink of Stella. You're gonna have to shake it every time you use it to break up those perfect pearl particles. I'm using gold because that to me looks most like the Wink of Stella pen, which is my favorite. But you can add the regular pearl, perfect pearl, which is like a white silvery kind of shimmer. And that's really pretty too. But this one's gold. I'm taking a rose image and I stamped and die cut it the exact same way. I wanted to compare it to my homemade Wink of Stella pen to one that is brand new. Here is a brand new pen. I bought it specifically for this video. I'm here pumping the pen to get it started. So this is the new one. The rose I'm coloring on the right is the new pen, and the one on the left is the handmade Wink of Stella pen. And you can't really see it on video, but I did have my mom shine some light over the roses to try to show you the difference. It's very, very subtle. Mine is a little bit less shiny. It's a little more pearly as opposed to glittery, but it's almost identical, guys. So here is the light shining on both of them. The one on the left is the handmade Wink of Stella. The one on the right is the brand new Wink of Stella. So very, very close match. So this next hack was extremely useful for me. I discovered this one, and basically, since I make cards for a living, I oftentimes use the same die over and over again to create multiple cards. So this particular die I've probably used 50 times, and it's at the point where it's lost its coating that removes the die cut from the die. So you can see it's really stuck in there. I'm having to poke at it very carefully, and even then I still ripped one of the petals. Here you can see it's still stuck in my die. So whenever this happens, I will grab some wax paper. I will fold it up a few times, and this stuff is really thin, so you can cut 4 layers of it at once, and then I'll add the cardstock behind that wax paper. I'll run it through my Gemini, and here, look at this, guys. One poke in the back and peels right off. And if you do that, I would say 2 or 3 times, the wax paper coating coats the die again, and you don't have to use the wax paper anymore. So I usually do 3 or 4 rounds of wax paper, and my die is basically brand new again. So I love that hack. I learned that one throughout my card making years, and so I wanted to include that one because I haven't seen it in any other video. So my final one is embellishing. So I'm taking a thank you word die. I wanted to dress it up a little bit with some pearls. The pencil I'm using to pick it up is a wax pencil. I tried to use a Crayola pencil to see if that would work. Unfortunately, it does not, but a crayon would work. So if you have kids who like to color, who have crayons, grab one of those, steal them, steal an ugly color, and use it as a jewel picker-upper. But yeah, a wax pencil, a Prismacolor pencil does work. I tried to use every pencil I had in my stash. The other hack here, you can see I'm coloring my pearls yellow with an alcohol marker. That's nothing revolutionary. I feel like that's in every hack video, but it's really helpful. It's nice that you don't have to buy every color under the sun to get a exact color that you want. So I'm going to add some rhinestones to the center of these flowers. And again, I'm going to color those in with a purple marker to coordinate with the purple on the die cut. And that's it, guys. Those are my top 10, maybe more than 10, I don't know, favorite hacks. These hacks have really helped me, especially when I was a beginner, and they're hacks I use every single day. So I wanted to share them. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And I have so many more hacks, guys. I wanted to keep this under 15 minutes. So if you want a part 2, let me know down in the comments. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.